What's going on, everyone? This is the 24th episode of Carpool Chats here. I'm joined here by our first ever panel episode here with Isaiah and my co-host from Fan Response, Ryan. We got a couple of new guests here, Sri and Trevor. Trevor's been on before, but this is going to be his first Facebook live stream. Trevor, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, enjoying this lovely Thursday night, just chilling.
How about my partners in crime, Isaiah Young and Ryan Schreiner? How you guys doing?
What's up, guys? What's up? Just, sitting in my garage, bored as hell. It's all miserable right now. We got to get this virus out of here as soon as possible. I can't deal with
Agreed. I can't wait for it sooner. I love shooting hoops around, right in my backyard, Old Mission Park, man. That's what I call it. Shri, how you doing over there in Atlanta?
Doing well. Just trying to ride out this quarantine.
Absolutely. So just a little quick background here. Shri is actually a lifelong Patriots fan. He grew up near the city of Boston in Massachusetts, went to Ohio State with me, and now he's doing finance, or actually he's doing analytics in Home Depot in Atlanta. Obviously me and Isaiah are in Fremont, and Trevor is a logistics student. He's going to be graduating next year. Is that right, Trevor?
That is correct.
Logistics management student graduating next year. He's from Pennsylvania. So we're coming at you from all corners of the country here. We're all feeling the impacts of the virus, but today we're just going to save it up for sports talk. We're going to talk sports today. And
Steven,
yes.
Before you continue, I just want to tell the audience right now, for all of you guys out there, please wash your hands, practice social distancing, and stay safe. We want this virus gone as soon as possible so we can return to our daily lives.
Yeah, whatever you do, guys, please do not go around partying in South Beach, Florida, and then coming home to your families. That's very stupid. I saw some of that. But speaking of Florida, we're going to get into our first major NFL free agency move here. We're going to be covering multitude of topics here. And there's been some big moves that went down, but I don't think there's been anything bigger than Tom Brady to Tampa Bay. I mean, everyone expected him to either land in Los Angeles or land in New England, stay in that Boston area, but he ends up going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tree, since you are the lifelong Patriots fan here, I just want to get your general reaction to it and how you think the Bucs are going to be doing this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I was shocked that he would leave New England. It had always been kind of talked about for at least the past year. So I can't say I was shocked that he left, but, it's just kind of surreal waking up and learning that the quarterback that, has started on my team for 20 plus years, taken us to 6 Super Bowl titles and 9 Super Bowls, it's just weird to wake up and have the feeling that he's not the starting quarterback for the Patriots anymore. But, in terms of him landing with the Bucs, I think it made sense for him. He has some weapons there that he lacked in New England. He has a great offensive mind in Bruce Arians and a great offensive line to protect him as well. The defense can use some improvement, but, he's done that in the past with New England. So I think that he's going to be successful in Tampa Bay. Before this offseason, if you'd told me that he's going to go to Tampa Bay, I wouldn't have believed you. But now that, I look at it retroactively, I understand his decision. In terms of like how well Tampa Bay is going to do this season, I think that they're actually going to make the playoffs. I think my prediction is going to be 11-5. Brady hasn't missed the playoffs since 2002. So new city, new fans, new coaches, new scenario. I still think it's more the same for Tom Brady. I think they go 11-5 and end up winning the division with the tiebreaker over the Saints.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Obviously, you have so many great weapons in Tampa Bay that Jameis Winston had the opportunity to work with. Vincent Jackson and early on in his career, and then now Mike Evans filling his shoes. You have Cameron Brate, Chris Godwin, and I guess the two big holes in this team is still the running attack and the defense. So Shri, does that defense concern you as far as Tampa Bay's possible path to the playoffs? Because I know you're saying 11-5, but I don't think there's any doubt about the offense, specifically the receiving game. But what about that defense?
The defense can be somewhat of a liability. However, like I said, Brady's done it before. In 2011, the Patriots had the last ranked defense in the league. We've multiple times had one of the worst defenses in the league, and Brady's done it before where he's been able to be successful with a poor defense. So I think he can do it again, especially with the amount of offensive talent he has, and especially his attitude and his his presence as a leader, as a winner. I don't think he wanted to go out the way he did last season. He ended the season on a pick in the playoffs, or with a pick in the playoffs. I think that he's coming back for vengeance this year. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to win the Super Bowl, but I do think that, he carries his team to a playoff berth and has some success there in Tampa Bay, something that the Bucs haven't seen in quite a while.
And you actually have him taking the division title, correct, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yes, I think that they're going to split the games with the Saints. Saints will be 11-5 as well, but I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get the tiebreaker over the Saints.
Next, I want to go to Ryan, my co-host from Fan Response from Ohio. He actually has a very opposite take here. He does not have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers making the playoffs. Ryan, I want to pick your brain on this one. Kind of a bold call, but I have to say I agree with it. But I just want to, I'm willing to discuss it with you.
My thoughts about Tampa Bay and their prospects of making the playoffs is just this. I believe Tom Brady will be a net improvement over Jameis Winston, but I don't think it will be enough of one to make the playoffs in a very tough division, with having to go up against the Saints twice, the high-powered offense of the Atlanta Falcons twice, and against the Carolina Panthers, which who knows how good Teddy Bridgewater and Christian McCaffrey can be. So it's interesting to look at. But to me, I see Tom Brady's kind of play style in recent years being that of like a slow, controlled offense, check down passes to medium routes with the occasional deep shots as being kind of counterintuitive to the high-powered offense that the Bucs want to run. And while I believe Tom Brady can run an explosive offense with deep passes down the field consistently, you have to keep in mind he's 43 years old. His arm has gone through wear and tear over his 20-plus year career. Will his arm tire out towards the end of the season if he's asked to do that? I don't know. I mean, I would say that he'll tire out towards the end of the year if I had to put my money on it. And outside of that, the defense will improve because there won't be the turnovers and the constant pressure on them. But I actually think the offensive points per game will take a step back. They'll average less points a game, but they'll have a much better time of possession, which will help that defense. But still, that secondary of the Bucs, or that pass defense of the Bucs, is not good. And at age 43, I just don't see Tom Brady being able to carry a team like he did in his prime, which for today's quarterbacks is up until the age of like 36. But Tom Brady is way past that in terms of age.
Yeah, and to add on to your point there, Sam made a very, very interesting point in his podcast, Buzzer Beaters. By the way, everyone tuning in, you should check that out. Amazing podcast that he hosts with a multitude of sports fans across the nation. And he really dove into the fact that Jameis Winston might not be as bad as people demonize him to be. I mean, he passed for over 5,000 yards on Tampa Bay and 32 touchdowns. Granted, he had 30 interceptions as well, but that type of gunslinging mentality, just like Ryan said, it's not going to carry over well to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady, maybe as fluidly as it did with Jameis Winston. With Winston, He turned the ball over a lot, but he still had over 5,000 yards passing. He still gave you the 32 touchdowns. He was very much a boom or bust player offensively, and I think they're going to actually lose out on some of that offensive firepower with the 43-year-old Tom Brady. He might be the greatest of all time, but his arm at age 43 is not going to produce the kind of upside that you would see in a Patrick Mahomes or a Drew Brees just at this age. And another concern is really the running back. The running back committee in Tampa Bay, I would argue, is slightly worse than what New England has. In New England, you had Sony Michel, you had James White, and James White's gone, and they have Rex Burkhead now. But I think that with the Tampa Bay, they got really good receiving core, but who are you really going to have run the ball? Are you going to put Chris Godwin or Cameron Braid to go run the ball? Because ultimately, you're still going to need a solid run game to keep the defense off the field, to play great time of possession, all of that. And I think that actually Trevor's team, the Los Angeles Chargers, have that. They have that in their arsenal. So I want to talk to you really quickly, Trevor. You wanted, I don't know if you had, but at least you wanted Tom Brady to go to the Los Angeles Chargers. What was your reaction to the move, and where do you see the Buccaneers going from here?
I was kind of surprised because Tom Brady's family is in LA. So it's like you're coming home, you're going to play for your remaining maybe a year or two in LA, and after that you retire, which is like a fine career. But being on the Chargers, you don't have the offensive line. I've seen in the past for like drafting, they normally go defensive line or offensive line. I never really seen them pick like a running back or a wide receiver. It's like rare for them to do, which is shocking, but like their team just can't keep an offensive line. But like even him going to LA would have been nice because the Chargers just got a new stadium. So like you're going to have primetime events and he still wants to be in the spotlight. But I see Tom Brady's more looking at the history aspect and going to the NFC and trying to break more records because the Super Bowl this year is going to be in Tampa Bay, and he could be the first quarterback to take a team that could host it and win it all.
Ooh, good point. All right, so what's your record projection for the Bucs?
It's tough because it's going to come down to what Teddy Bridgewater is going to do. I think it's going to be rough on the lines that I think the Saints are going to clinch it, but the Bucs will probably follow up unless Matt Ryan has a phenomenal year. He hasn't, but I feel like he wants a Super Bowl. He's going to go get it. And if he doesn't win it this year, I think his career might need to be like redesigned and revamped. And does he leave Atlanta if he doesn't get to the playoffs this year?
But we got to hear the record here, Trevor.
So I'm going for the record. I'm probably going to go feeling 9-7 wild card.
I'm feeling 9-7, and I know that there's going to be the whole 7-team per conference playoff system. But given the teams that missed last year that could really come back into the picture, the Carolina Panthers with Teddy Bridgewater now, newly acquired, great deal, by the way, Christian McCaffrey, and then you have the Chicago Bears, and you have on top of that the Los Angeles Rams, as well as teams like the Vikings and Packers that are going to stay in that picture. I just don't see 9-7 in the NFC South being good enough for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers to make the playoffs. I agree with Ryan here. I don't think they make a run for the playoffs. I think they finish a disappointing 9-7, and this proves to be a little bit too much for a older Brady to handle. Before we go to Isaiah, I want to get to Ryan because we didn't get his record projection yet.
I'm gonna go 8-8, a marginal improvement from Winston, but like I said, that division is tough. And you look at their schedule; they have teams like the Chiefs, the Packers, the Vikings on their schedule. That is a very tough schedule. And overall, I say 8-8, and I agree that an 8-8, 9-7 record in this NFC will not make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just going to be very, very, very tough, especially in the NFC South and just the conference in general. I still believe that the NFC is the gold standard for parity in the NFL. I understand you got the Chiefs and the Ravens, but right now, all around, besides the top two teams, the NFC clearly is deeper. and I think that's going to prevent Brady and the Buccaneers from reaching the playoffs. But I want to go to Isaiah now. Isaiah had hoped that possibly the 49ers would replace Jimmy Garoppolo with Tom Brady, and then Nick Mullins would then take the mantle there. His prediction was actually Tom Brady to the Las Vegas Raiders. Isaiah, talk me through your reaction to him signing with the Buccaneers.
My reaction was, it was very shocking, because even though like a lot of the sports analysts around the world had said for months that Tom Brady was going to leave, and I had begun to think that he was going to leave, but you didn't really think he was going to leave until he actually left. So when he actually left, when I woke up like on Tuesday morning and I got on my phone and I saw Tom Brady announces he is leaving the Patriots, I was like, oh my gosh, man. Wow, I cannot believe this just happened. It's like basically LeBron leaving Cleveland for the Lakers and for the Miami Heat. Like, it's been speculated for many months that it was going to happen, but you don't really know until it actually happened. But my take on him going to the Bucs is that I really like the move, because if you look at it, Tom Brady now gets a coach that is far different than Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick was like a dictator. You had to do what he says or else you were going to get cut. Bruce Arians, he loves his players. He is a true players coach. And then you've got the weapons. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are, I would say, the best wide receiver duo that Tom Brady has had in his entire career. And look at the tight ends. O.J. Howard last year, I know he didn't have that good of a year, but he has a lot of talent in him. And I think Brady will get that talent out because he loves to throw it to the tight ends. Cameron Brate. This move is going to be good for him. And I know you guys are talking about how their defense, you guys don't really trust it. Their defense is not that bad, actually. They have Levante David, who is a pretty good inside linebacker. And then they've got two of the best pass rushers in the NFL in Shaq Barrett, who had 19.5 sacks last year, and Jason Pierre-Paul. I just think that with that offense that Brady has, plus they might add Todd Gurley. We don't know about that. With Brady and that offense, they're going to be explosive. That defense is going to get better and better. They just need to add a couple of corners. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to go 12-4 and win the NFC South.
Wow, that is a very bold prediction here. I want to bring everyone in on the loop here. Do you guys see this Tampa Bay team as a Super Bowl contender?
Yes, I do. I think they are a right now, I would say with where, like, how they are built, I don't think they are, but I'm like speculating that they're going to add like a Todd Gurley or maybe an Antonio Brown and then add a couple of corners. If they do that, then yes, they are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so we got all sorts of projections out here. Me and Trevor think Tampa Bay is going 9-7. Ryan's got them going 8-8. You got them at 12-4. Shree's got them at 11-5. Got a huge range here from 8-8 and 12-4. I want to bring Shree back in on this. Shree, what's your reaction to all these takes here?
All I gotta say is, people always doubt Tom Brady, and he always proves them wrong. When's the last time we had a playoff without Tom Brady in it? It's been 20 years. So it's, especially with the type of offensive talent he has in Tampa Bay, it's pretty hard for me to see him not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough one for sure.
Wait,
Well, can I respond?
Yes,
Yeah,
Ryan,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say, when was the last time we saw Tom Brady on a team not named the Patriots? There's just so much new things he has to learn going to a new team, especially in this offseason where the coronavirus is messing up the scheduling of all offseason programs. It's a difficult adjustment to make after 20 years of being in one system on one team, let alone making that adjustment in such a crazy offseason such as this one. So that's just another factor that adds into my prediction of 8-8. This is just a very difficult situation regardless.
Yeah, no doubt. But if there were any player that, I'd trust to make that move, it would be Tom Brady. The guy is an ultimate competitor. The guy works his ass off. He's in the film room till 4 a.m. He really does whatever he can do to win, and he's shown it, throughout his career. So, I just have that trust in Tom Brady, having seen him play and having him been on my team for 20 years.
I just say I completely agree with you. If he was even 39, if he was 39 and he made this move, I'd agree with all your points. I just see Father Time catching up eventually. Father Time has to get him soon. He's 43 years old, and I just think his age will start to show this year. And given that he's on a new team with so much to learn, it'll just compound that aging even more. So I don't know. There's just so many unknowns for me to make very high predictions on the Bucks.
I just want to
Yeah.
add one. I just want to add one more thing when it comes to this Brady going to the Bucks. I'm actually very happy that Brady decided to take his talents to the NFC, because besides the fact that we've all been wondering for years, who is it that made the Patriots, Belichick or Brady? The thing that I've been wondering is, how would Brady do if he was in the NFC? It's like LeBron James going from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference. The AFC has been perceived, like in many years, as one of the weakest conference in the NFL. Now Brady is going to be going to the NFC, which is like the Western Conference in the NFL. So I just want to see how he does there. And I'm also going to be fascinated because look at the NFC South now. You've got Brady, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater. Just stacked, man. Stacked.
Yeah, I wouldn't knock anyone for not counting out Brady. And there's good reason for him to continue his success. He's got a great receiving core in Tampa Bay now. He's going to be playing in one of those warm weather conditions. And on top of that, he's going to be playing a lot of declining teams in the NFC. There's some reason to believe that Brady can possibly bring this team to even the Super Bowl. But I just don't see it happening this year. I think the declining teams are going to have bounce back years, and that'll knock them out of the playoffs. But I want to talk about the Patriots now. And Sri, I want to get your take on this. Where do the Patriots go from here at quarterback? They don't have a lot of options. They have Jared Stidham, and they have Tom Brady who left. So what's the move here now?
I think they roll with Stidham. I think there's a reason they got rid of, they basically got rid of Brady. They offered him 2 years, $50 million, which we all know is pretty pathetic. So I think in their mind they're getting rid of players left and right. They got rid of Calvin Noy. They're getting rid of Danny Shelton. They got rid of other defensive players, Daron Harmon. So I think that, they're essentially this year, they are looking towards next offseason. They're going to roll with Stidham. They're going to get a high draft pick. They're going to pick a good defensive player, a good quarterback to build around. And with the cap space that they have in 2021 and 2022, I think that they can really build a winner in the next year or two. However, next season, I don't have too many expectations from the Patriots.
Yeah, I think it's so important for the Patriots here to not panic, because you let go of Brady for a reason. And now you're kind of in this rebuilding phase, but you still got great weapons around you. You still got a great team that's coached by Belichick. And I just think that you should roll the dice with Stidham right now, see what you have. And then next offseason, you have so many other options. Does anyone else want to chime in about this Patriots quarterback situation?
Yeah, I got an interesting name to throw out to you guys. So I've heard Andy Dalton, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, even Mitchell Trubisky. But the name that I really think that the Patriots should go after, even though I highly doubt this is going to happen, is Derek Carr. Derek Carr from the Las Vegas Raiders. Why?
I'm surprised you didn't say Nick Mullins, Isaiah.
First of all, I did have Nick Mullins, going to the Patriots in our free agency pickup, by the way. But anyways, Derek Carr, because Derek Carr is number one, he's durable. He's only missed 2 games in his entire career. One of those games was because of that fractured leg that he suffered. And the other one was, I believe, because the Raiders were tanking, so they decided not to play him in that week 17 game. He doesn't turn the ball over. Last year, he threw 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The year before, he threw 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 70% completion percentage. He's a game manager. Plus, Pro Football Focus ranked him as the 13th best quarterback in the NFL last year. He's not that bad. It's just that he doesn't put up like the most glamorous stats, but he can win you games. He's like Tom Brady was when Brady was, he's like a young Tom Brady. He's just doesn't make mistakes, doesn't turn the ball over, manages the game, and he's pretty clutch. So I really think the Patriots should go after Derek Carr, but I don't see the Raiders trading him though.
Yeah, I don't see the Raiders moving on from Carr yet, but it is a very volatile situation out there. They are acquiring Mariota and Winston. So keep on the lookout for that, because if any of these quarterbacks could possibly outplay Derek Carr, we could be seeing him leaving the Raiders.
And also, there's also rumors that they might get Justin Herbert. So if they do draft Justin Herbert, and if the rumors are true that they get Winston, you have Herbert, Mariota, and Winston, and Carr. Someone's going to have to go. At least 2 of those quarterbacks are going to have to go. So watch out for that Las Vegas Raiders situation.
Yeah, oh my God. That almost reminds me of the Minnesota Timberwolves late 2000s situation, in which they just drafted so many point guards because they kept taking the best available player. It was like Ricky Rubio was drafted, and then they had like Johnny Flynn, I believe, and Corey Brewer as well. They were running him at point guard. They had so many guards on their team. But anyway, let's get back to the topic of football.
I had to
Ryan,
add one
you
thing
seem to have
about
some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I was about to say I have some thoughts about Derek Carr being compared to a young Tom Brady. Just no, that is absolutely ridiculous. You saying how he's clutch. I disagree with that. I don't think Derek Carr has the mental fortitude to lead the Patriots like a Tom Brady did. You look at some of the plays Derek Carr has made, there's been a few times late in game where it's a 4th down and he will throw the ball away or throw it into the dirt, just make these silly mental errors that Tom Brady would never make. Also, would like go down on sacks as often as a 39-year-old Peyton Manning did in his last year, just not stand in and take the hit on a consistent basis. No, I don't see Derek Carr as being anywhere near close to a young Tom Brady, and I don't think the Patriots would have any interest in him.
Okay, what about Trevor? You got any thoughts?
I do have a few thoughts. I'm just thinking what the Patriots want to do. Because, like, nowadays you look at college quarterbacks, there's no true field general out on the field. You don't have a quarterback that sits in the huddle, figures out a game plan, and runs it like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning did. So, like, is Bill Belichick willing to, I guess, train up a quarterback or go out and find a veteran quarterback in that scenario?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. But Belichick, I don't know how many more coaching years he has in him. I know he's not like the Greg Popovich of the NFL yet in terms of just like age and, possibility of retiring. So that might play a factor into how willing he is to go out there and grab a veteran quarterback and train him versus kind of build like a Jarrett Stidham from the ground up long term.
I have one more name that I really want to throw out there, but he's not like currently in the NFL. He's currently in college. What I think the Patriots should do is right now they're the oldest team in the NFL. The New England Patriots should tank for the next 2 seasons, and then like get draft picks, young players, stuff like that. Get a ton of cap space, and then in the 2022 draft, go get my guy, Keaton Slovis from USC. I believe this guy will be the best quarterback to ever come out of USC. He has such great footwork, great arm, can see the field really good, great IQ. He's going to be a perfect fit for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, definitely a good name to throw out there. We'll see. I don't believe this Patriots team is going to go away this season, though. I think that they're kind of in the same situation that the Thunder were in the NBA, where they lost a key piece, obviously, in Tom Brady, best quarterback of all time. But right now, they have really nothing to lose. They have no expectations on them. I think they're really going to play with that chip on their shoulder. The defense is going to step up. I think Belichick is going to step up in the coaching game. And I see the Patriots really feasting on a very weak AFC East. I know people are gonna throw the Bills out there, but the Bills, they got Stephon Diggs. They have all this like receiving weaponry, and they have Josh Allen. I have my questions about Josh Allen. I got my questions about just the Bills defense losing a few key pieces, as Ryan mentioned in our fan response episode last night. So I still see the Patriots, finishing second in that division, finishing with a 10-6 record. And I actually believe they end up being the better team out of this for this year. I'm talking about this season. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Who do you think will have the better season, the New England Patriots or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Oh, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers because right now, if you look at the Patriots, they are in absolute shambles. The New England Patriots, they just lost their quarterback. They don't have a quarterback right now. Well, they have Jared Stidham, but I don't really believe in him. Their offensive line, I think they just lost a couple of pieces. They don't have any weapons whatsoever. Their defense, one of the best in the NFL last year. Their defense just lost 3 of their 5 best defensive players, including Kyle Van Noy. That was a huge loss. I think the Patriots are going to take a massive step back, and I think that the Patriots, I'm going to predict right now, I'm going to throw one bold prediction. The Patriots are going to be the 3rd place team in the AFC East next season.
Wow, that is who do you have them behind?
I got them behind the Bills. I think the Bills win the AFC East. I think the Jets, like everybody's laughing at the Jets, but I think the Jets have a lot of good offensive talent. They got Le'Veon Bell. Remember, Le'Veon Bell last year, he had a bad year, but he was coming off a year in which he didn't play. So it was expected. So I think he's going to have a better year. They're going to have a better year after 1 year under Adam Gase's offense. And their defense is not bad with C.J. Mosley and the other guys.
I got one statement for you. Sam
What?
Darnold is going to continue seeing ghosts out there.
I'm just going to say this. I have a feeling that Ryan is calling 911 to get me drug tested after all the delusional things he just heard me say.
All I had to say about your prediction of him, or not them, the Patriots going 3-13, Bill Belichick could suit up and play quarterback himself at age 70 or whatever age he is, and they would win 5 games. You cannot say this Patriots team is going 3-13. That is just ludicrous.
Yeah, Isaiah, he lives for the hot takes. Well, if no one else has any thoughts about this Patriots versus Buccaneers topic, let's jump to the next big move here. DeAndre Hopkins traded to Arizona for David Johnson, a 2nd and a 4th round pick. Texans also traded a 4th round pick themselves. Isaiah, what are your thoughts on this move?
My thoughts on this move is, well, I have 2 thoughts. Number 1, Bill O'Brien, after this show is over, I am going to call the cops and get that man drug tested immediately. That man has made foolish trade after foolish trade after foolish trade. Dude, I could do a better job as a GM than Bill O'Brien. That's how foolish that guy is. You trade DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the NFL, who was basically your entire offense last year, for David Johnson, a guy who has been broken and ineffective the last 2 seasons, and also a 2nd round pick. That's the most dumbest trade ever. I don't know. I just feel like, did Cliff Kingsbury have some bad pictures of Bill O'Brien or something? Is that why he made that trade? I really don't understand this trade. I think that this trade is going to get Bill O'Brien fired after this season. And Arizona, look out, guys. You got Kyler Murray at quarterback, Kenyon Drake at running back. You've got Hopkins, Fitzgerald, and Isabella with Hakeem Butler. those guys, Cliff Kingsbury calling plays. That offense is going to be explosive. Their defense just needs to get a couple of more pieces. I have Arizona actually as one of my playoff teams next season with what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and that's another team that Tampa Bay is going to have to worry about within the wild card race should they not be able to win that division. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, you guys already know my thoughts on this trade, and I have a theory with this, Isaiah. With all the news about Biden having dementia and having these mental gaps, I'm convinced that Bill O'Brien has dementia and his mind is stuck in 2015. Maybe he just saw the 2015 David Johnson, and from then on, he's lost all memory of the past 4 to 5 years because there is no other way. There is no other explanation that you trade a top 5 bona fide superstar wide receiver like that for a worn out running back who's 6'1". He's old. I mean, I know David Johnson had his beast mode moments in 2015. But right now, at his age, at 6'1", he's not going to have the energy or the leverage to really carry this Texans team to much at all. And now if I'm Deshaun Watson, I just am totally wanting out of that situation. I'm demanding a trade. I'm going to be the biggest diva I can possibly be because this is just inexcusable. Bill O'Brien should be removed and banned from the NFL for life. I want to hear Trevor and Shree's thoughts because Ryan and I really went through this extensively on Fair Response last night.
I'm feeling that the Cardinals are probably going to pick up a running back in the draft because, like, it's a decent running back draft class. You have Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. Nice pickup. You have them as, like, the 6th pick in the draft, if I'm right. But besides that, they're building up for a playoff caliber team. And the division of the NFC West, it's a gauntlet. You have the Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and now you have the Cardinals. Like, it's literally split in the division to forever who wants to clinch it. It's like 25% for whoever's going to win it. And then, like, you're going to get a wild card out of that bracket.
Yeah.
But, you were about to say something?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just like thinking it's going to be fun to watch that division play out this year. Like, it's fun to watch every year because some years there's a dominant team, but for the past 3 years, it's been a toss-up on who's clinching it. Most of those teams, majority of them been to the playoffs in the past decade. So it's just fun to watch that division unfold.
And it's fun to watch the NFC in general, Trevor. You just can never tell who's going to win that conference because 1 minute's the Rams, the next minute could be the Packers, next minute's the Eagles, and then it could be the Vikings another minute. It's just back and forth in that conference.
And for the Texans, you just basically destroyed an organization in like one night. How does like a coach do something like that?
I'm telling you, his mind is stuck in 2015. All his memory of 2016 and 2019 has been wiped out. That's the only explanation I got.
Like, I would not trade away DeAndre Hopkins. I would build, like, maybe get a couple young wide receivers in the draft or maybe build up an offensive line to give myself a contending AFC divisional championship run or get myself at least to the AFC title game. And that's what you're trying to do. But seeing them play against the Bills and take that game to overtime, and they were trailing that entire game. It was so bad to watch. The Bills should have won that game, but didn't. It was just like came down to veteran experience at quarterback to lead the Texans to that win. If the Texans didn't have a veteran quarterback who'd been in a playoff scenario, they would have lost that game 100%.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Hey, Sri, you've been awfully quiet about this topic, so I'm assuming you mostly just agree with the panel here.
That's where you're wrong. I don't think he's nearly as stupid as you guys make him out to be. I actually like Bill O'Brien. I think he's a good coach. He's had several problems I've heard in the past with DeAndre Hopkins to a point where he, compared him to Aaron Hernandez, which obviously is not a fair comparison, but these are just reports that I've read out of Houston. So if you have a player like that obviously is not in the same direction as your coach, same direction as potentially other players on the team, I think you got to get rid of him no matter who the player is. And you've seen Bill Belichick make moves like this in the past. You've seen him trade away players that you're like, wow, why did he trade this guy away? Jamie Collins comes to mind. Back in 2003, Lawyer Malloy comes to mind. And people were aghast. People were like, why are you trading away these players? But, same thing. They're not, moving in the same direction as the team. And second round pick could end up being, a very productive player, as well as David Johnson, who I know his best years are behind him, but he could have stuff left in the tank. We never know, and he's obviously a very talented offensive weapon. So, do I think this makes Houston better? No, but potentially could it help in the locker room, and could it help them with their team chemistry? Potentially, yes. Depending on what the situation was, and if these reports that I'm hearing are true, that Hopkins may have been butting heads with Bill O'Brien.
But even if the situation turned out to be that way, why couldn't the Texans handle it like the Vikings, where in press conferences and just in public appearances, when they're asked the question, they say, you know what? DeAndre Hopkins is a Houston Texan. That's where I see like Minnesota handled the situation so much better with Diggs and wide receivers in general. If you're a really great wide receiver, if you're a superstar wide receiver, and you have a couple of bad games where you think you didn't get the ball, you're going to be a diva. That's just what's going to happen. Like wide receivers and just players in general when it comes to sports, especially star ones, they are just so much bigger than the team in terms of personality nowadays. That's just how it's been for the past 5 to 10 years now. And so why couldn't you have handled it the same way that the Vikings did and just say, listen, this guy's on our team right now. That's all we know. We're not going to talk about anything else and leak any other reports.
But the situation with Diggs and the situation with Hopkins is a little bit different. That's exactly what the Texans did with Hopkins. If they were having trouble throughout the season, nobody heard about it. You didn't hear about it until they traded him. So it's similar to the situation with Diggs in Minnesota, where during the season in Minnesota, you did hear about Diggs having problems with the team, and in the offseason, they traded him to the Bills. Similarly, the Texans could have had problems with Hopkins throughout the season, and at the end of the season, trade him to the Bills, or to the Cardinals. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, Bill O'Brien is kind of an old school guy. He's a disciple of Bill Belichick. I don't think he puts up with it, and you can be a diva. Some people are going to put up with it. Some people are not going to put up with it. And Bill O'Brien just seems to me like a guy that's not going to put up with it. And if you're not going to put up with it, might as well get something out of the player than, keep the player until he leaves elsewhere. So I really don't think the move is as bad as people are making it out to be.
Okay, so if it's a question of moral character and just having the right pieces around to support the development of your team, I can see where that angle is coming from. I still just think to get David Johnson at his age and to get so little for Hopkins is just kind of criminal. But let's move on to another topic.
I had a
here.
couple thoughts about this before we wrapped
Yes.
up. One, I just want to say that I heard the same reports as you did, and I really associate that as a problem with Bill O'Brien than Hopkins. I just think when I read that report, I read that as a gross mischaracterization of Hopkins by Bill O'Brien. And when you look at all the big time players that didn't mesh with Bill O'Brien, like Clowney, they just lost a star defensive tackle, and all these players in the past, I associate this more to Bill O'Brien than Hopkins. And even if you wanted to move him, my major problem was that you got so little. I have no problem with the Vikings moving Diggs because they got so much more in comparison to the Hopkins trades. For Diggs, they got a first, like a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth, while giving out only Diggs and a seventh. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans only got a second and an aging old running back that will cost you $10 million a year. So if you had to move him, at least get fair market value for him. Don't sell him at a discount just to get rid of him. That's where I really draw most of my anger from this deal, in that they just got so little for him.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add one last thing before we move on, is that I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, a month from now, or even who knows, tomorrow, we see that Bill O'Brien has traded Deshaun Watson for a box of donuts. Like, I really wouldn't be shocked. This man has made terrible trade after terrible trade, and I think Deshaun Watson is going to be traded at, like, by the end of this offseason. I really do, because I think he's going to either request to be traded, because the situation in Houston is just going to be untenable. I just can't see him being the Houston Texans quarterback by the start of next season, because you don't have any more weapons now. You're basically like Tom Brady.
Let's move on to the next big off-season move. Philip Rivers ends up signing with the Colts for a 1-year, $25 million deal. Last night, I went through my thoughts with it with Brian. I think this is a PR stunt for the Colts to kind of say, hey, look, we're taking a shot here. We're giving the fans what we want, and we're letting them know that we're still going to go for a championship. We're going to try and see what we can do with a solid veteran quarterback with proven playoff experience. We're just going to get the biggest name out there, and I agree with that rationality. I think they really should swing for the fences, and they should give their fans something to cheer about. Rivers to the Colts, I think he still has a lot of arm talent around him, no doubt. But with his experience and his talent, I think it'll draw fans in. It'll bring excitement for the Colts. But outside of that, I really don't see them as any sort of contender. I could see this team easily finishing 6-10 or 7-9. I would say 6-10 given Rivers' age. But I want to draw in Trevor here because he's the Chargers fan in the room. He's been a lifelong Chargers fan, and he obviously has his own extensive and private thoughts about Rivers. Trevor, why don't you share with us what you thought about this move?
Like, that's been my go-to at this point. I think, but for the most part, the Colts will win that division without a question, unless some weird fluke happens and the Titans win it.
Yeah, and I think the reason why you keep going with that 9-7, 10-6 prediction is that generally with talented teams that still don't have their chemistry right yet, what's going to be the biggest struggle for them is winning those one possession grinded out games where it really comes down to the final minutes. If you're Philip Rivers or you're Tom Brady, you got to learn a new playbook. Those are games that you could really easily, fumble or intercept away, or you could just turn the ball over on downs without an extensive knowledge and working experience of the playbook you're working with. And when you're at that age and you're working with new systems, I think it really does factor into, you got to factor in the crowd noise, you got to factor in the kind of pressure, 2-minute drill, all of that. It just requires incredible precision. And this is just the type of things that can make you lose those games where you could have been an 11-5 team, but you dropped those two very close games where you're maybe up by 3 or down by 3, and you just fumbled the ball or miscommunicated with the receiver.
I do think Philip Rivers can handle those pressures. We've seen him do it before. Remember the, last second touchdown he had against the Chiefs, 2 years ago on the Thursday night football game. So, he can handle that pressure. Going to a different team with a different system may be a challenge, but I feel like they might do some adaptations so things are not that much drastic from the Chargers. So I'm just thinking Philip Rivers will be okay in the Colts, and hopefully this is like the Colts playoff push and they get him to a Super Bowl and he wins a ring and he can finally retire and be done with this league.
Let's bring Isaiah into this discussion. He seems to have so many the quarterbacks this year.
Whew. Listen, I love this move for the Chargers. I thought that this was going to happen when free agency started because Philip Rivers is very familiar with the Colts coaching staff. I think Frank Reich was his offensive coordinator back in San Diego, and Nick Sirianni was his quarterbacks coach, if I'm not mistaken. Their offense is basically the same that they ran when Rivers was in the Chargers with them. It just makes sense all in all, I just think it's a great move. And I think that right now with the AFC South as it is, the Jaguars, they're rebuilding. Houston Texans, I don't even know what they're doing. They're probably out. It's going to be the Colts or the Titans. And I just think the Titans just had that one fluke year like Steven's Minnesota Vikings. Sorry about that shot, by the way.
It's
But
not a fluke, man. The Vikings are in it to win it every other year. It's not a fluke there.
But I'm just saying, I just think that like the Titans with Tannehill and Henry last year had that fluke like that the Vikings did when they went to the NFC Championship. And I just think the Colts, they've got great defense. They've got good weapons. They just needed a quarterback, and they got it with Phillip Rivers, who he was pretty good last year. The only reason why he made so much interceptions, I felt like, was because of that offensive line. The pressure was just getting to him so much. And now the Colts, they have a good offensive line. So I think that Rivers will thrive. And I think the Colts win the AFC South.
One thing I will say about Rivers is he has this tendency to really sling the ball down the field when he doesn't really need to. So like late in the game, it's 2nd and 10, right? The whole 2-minute drill, the whole concept is you want to get as much yardage as the defense gives you, right? Keep the chains moving, keep that time running so you can have the final say. You'll see him throw like 40 or 50 or 30-yard bombs to receivers when he really doesn't need to force that ball up. Ironically, I think that could actually end up benefiting him in an offensive system that the Colts have, where you have deep threats like T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle, and Eric Ebron. You have these deep, tall threats who can really climb up and get the ball. But I want to hear Sri and Ryan's thoughts on this Rivers situation. Do you guys believe that he has more juice left in him and that the Colts are better for giving Rivers the starting job, presumably, rather than Brissett?
Well, go ahead.
So, will they be better than they were with Brissett? Yes, I do think they will be better than they were with Brissett. Will they make the playoffs? I don't think so. I think the AFC South is one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. We saw last year Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill and those Titans. They're no joke. They can go toe-to-toe with anybody. Houston Texans, I know they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins, but still, very explosive team. We saw them at times last year, light teams up. They lit my Patriots up. And the Colts, they have a good offense, like you said, with Jack Doyle and T.Y. Hilton. But so did the Chargers. The Chargers had a great defense as well last year, Phillip Rivers, I see him aging. I see that he's throwing more interceptions. I see, kind of the same things that we discussed with Tom Brady earlier regarding him aging. I see in Phillip Rivers. So I don't think that Phillip Rivers is going to be as successful as some may think, just because I feel like the the LA Chargers had more talent around him last season than he will on the Colts. And I just don't see him winning the division with the Colts or even, making into the wild card spot.
And we have to remember that even if Rivers and Brady are physically in similar situations, Rivers does not have the football IQ and the discipline that Tom Brady has during these tense 2-minute situations. Like I said, I've seen a couple of times where he is really slinging that ball on 3rd and 10, 2nd and 10, much further than he really needs to, and it just leads to interceptions. We saw it against the Chiefs, and that's really going to come back to bite him in the games that he really needs to win. And just a couple mistakes here and there could really shift you from a 9-7, 10-6 team to a 6-10 team. Ryan, I want to hear your thoughts. Go ahead, Trey.
I think you're absolutely right. The Chargers were in a lot of close games last year. In fact, I think they were the team that lost the most number of games under 7 points.
That's correct.
And so I think that he has to improve on that if he is to win games in the AFC South, because the AFC West, tough division, but AFC South I think is even tougher, with the exception of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think the rest of the AFC South is tougher than the rest of the AFC West was.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough challenge for Philip Rivers out there in the AFC South. Ryan, you seem to have some thoughts about the move as well.
To me, I still think Philip Rivers can be a very good quarterback. I believe with the much better offensive line that the Colts have, he'll have a lot less pressure on a consistent basis and play the game much more relaxed. And maybe that'll cut down on some of those gunslinging throws down the field, which inevitably get intercepted. So I think he'll definitely have a bit of a bounce back year. But still, in his old age, I only see him as a marginal improvement from Jacoby Brissett. And I believe that with Philip Rivers, the Colts will make the playoffs. But I also say that with Jacoby Brissett, just as long as the wide receiver core gets healthy, of which they were not healthy for large stretches of last year.
Yeah, and Ryan, I don't necessarily see this Colts team, Ryan and Sri and Trevor, as better off with Philip Rivers than Jacoby Brissett. I know that Brissett doesn't quite have the arm talent that Rivers does right now, but I think that he takes more of what the defense gives him, as I said before, and he's a younger energy in that locker room. He's going to stay healthy for you. He's going to execute the game plan properly because he's been with the Colts as the starter for a year now with Andrew Luck retiring. I don't necessarily see Philip Rivers here as an upgrade from Jacoby Brissett.
Well, I really believe that Philip Rivers is an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, if for no other reason than game experience and leadership. And I believe their
But
arm
what about
talent.
experience within the Colts? Because that's going to be important there.
Well, Frank Wright, as I believe Trevor or Isaiah said, is familiar with Philip Rivers. In
Yep,
that,
and Nick Sirianni as well, offensive coordinator.
so there is some familiarity, and I think that will be key, and it will really help speed up the learning process.
What about with the DeForest Buckner trade to the Colts, guys? Because that was obviously a very big deal for them. And I know you guys think that Philip Rivers might not be enough to push them into the playoffs. But what about when we factor in the DeForest Buckner move? Because we haven't talked about that yet.
Listen, for that move, the DeForest Buckner to the Colts, my Niners get the number 13th pick in return. I'm going to say this. It was a good trade for both sides, but it's going to be a big loss for my 49ers. The reason why is because DeForest Buckner was basically the guy that made our defensive line go. You had D Ford, Nick Bosa, and then you had Armstead on the inside with Buckner. The reason why our defensive line was so successful with Bosa, Ford, and Armstead and those other guys is because Buckner would always draw 2 to 3 offensive linemen his way. So he would clog those guys up, freeing Bosa, Ford, and the other guys free to roam and rush the passer and into one-on-one situations, which they would easily beat. I think with DeForest Buckner being gone, I think that really hurts our defensive line. I think that the 49ers need to go get someone else that could have a lot of success rushing on the inside, or else Bosa, Ford, and those other guys, they won't have the same success they had this year. And about that number 13th pick, I think that with that number 13th pick, like I've been saying, I think the Niners should get either a strong inside defensive lineman, or this really helps them getting a good number 1 receiver, because Emmanuel Sanders, he's a free agent. He's probably going to be gone because the Niners don't have enough money to pay him what he wants. So right now, your number 1 is Deebo Samuel, and you can't win with that. So you can either, with the number 13th pick, you can either go get a Jerry Jeudy, a Henry Ruggs, or a CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, or you could take the number 13th pick, pair with the number 31 pick that you have right now. The Niners have 2 first-round picks, and go get Julio Jones from the Atlanta Falcons, who Kyle Shanahan is very, very familiar with. I think that pick gives the Niners a lot of options to add an even bigger and better weapon next year. It's a good trade that we get that pick, but it's still a huge loss that our defensive line loses a huge piece.
Well, there's a lot said there, but I don't know if Atlanta would be ready to go into that rebuilding mode just yet with Matt Ryan still on the roster.
Also, I'd say if the 49ers want to trade up and get anyone, they should package those 2 first rounders and trade up to get Simmons, the linebacker out of Clemson, because he could just add another dynamic to this already great defense, because they have a great defensive line and they have good linebackers. But if they could get an all pro caliber, just speedy linebacker that can cover every single square inch of the field, that could really help to improve an already just amazing defense. So I think that'd be a move to look out for.
Trevor, Sri, what do you guys have any input on this move?
Defense wins championships. That's the first start. So I think the Colts will probably end up going to the draft and try to build up a defensive core and maybe draft a few offensive lines. So like in the early rounds, build up defensive line so you can get that like rush on the quarterback so you can delay deep routes and stuff like that. So they're more looking at the short game. Then probably rounds 3 and 4 get linebackers, and then 5, 6 you will get offensive line on the lower cost. You don't need a franchise tag like Jeff Saturday or something like that. You just need a line that can protect Phillip Rivers, and from there you could, your 7th pick is you get something that you might need or a replacement for a player that has like 1 year left on their contract and they're not coming back.
Yeah, I really like the move for the Niners. I think it's a pretty good move for the Colts, but I think the Niners come out, winning in terms of the fact that they already have such a good defensive line, even without DeForest Buckner, with Bosa, who was such a great pick last year, and Armstead. And they have a potential, like Ryan said, to add another elite defender or maybe even an elite explosive offensive player to their team, which really improves their team, I think, adding another young, talented player. In terms of Colts, I do think it helps their pass rush, but, their front 7 is not really their issue. They actually had a pretty good run defense last year, but they rank in the bottom half of the league in pass defense. And I don't think their secondary is too great. So in terms of getting a good player, yes, they did. But do I think that, maybe they could have gone to the draft and picked up an elite corner, an elite safety? I think that would have maybe done them more good than trading for DeForest Buckner.
Wait,
Certainly, you can have that discussion for sure.
Let me ask you guys something. So Bay Area Radio is talking about how the Niners paid Eric Armstead $17 million per year for the next 5 years. The Niners, they're like up against the cap. DeForest Buckner wanted Aaron Donald money, $21 million a year. If you look at his numbers, he hasn't really had that much sacks. Would you have paid, if you're the 49ers, right? Would you have paid DeForest Buckner the 21 mil and gotten rid of Eric Armstead, or would you have kept Armstead, paid him his 17 mil, and gotten rid of Buckner if you're John Lynch?
Hell no, I would not be paying that $21 million. And that's all I got to say to that.
I would say the 49ers. I would say the 49ers did the right thing in trading him for a first round pick and paying Aaron Armstead the lesser amount. I think what they did was just the perfect way to handle that situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ryan. I think that they signed Armstead for 17 million. DeForest Buckner was asking for more like 21, 22 million. For that $5 million, they can sign an elite rookie like Isaiah Simmons, or maybe even somebody offensively that can help them a great deal. So I think they almost got 2 players for the price of 1 when looking at the situation.
I agree. I just think like I've been saying, I don't think you will never win a Super Bowl with a defensive lineman making $20+ million. You will just never win a Super Bowl. So I think it was a good move. DeForest Buckner does not deserve Khalil Mack money. He's good, but he's not on that Khalil Mack level. That's all I got to say.
Well, I would say never within the NFC. Within the NFC, I mean, over our past 3-4 years, the winners of the NFC have been very random, and has not followed the trajectory of what analysts or experts have expected. The Rams won 2 years ago. Last year, the Niners won. 3 years ago, you had the Eagles. So expect the unexpected. I wouldn't say that paying a defensive lineman $20 million is an absolute deterrence to making the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but it severely hampers your team, though. That's the thing. You pay a defensive lineman like 20, 21, 22 mil.
And then you had the Falcons before that, too. So, yeah, I see where you're coming from, though. Any final thoughts?
I have a point to add to Isaiah's point, I guess. I would say that while what you're saying is true, in that we haven't seen a team that pays a defensive end or defensive lineman $20 million win a Super Bowl, you have to keep in mind up until like 2013 in the NBA, no team whose point guard led the league or led the team in scoring won a championship. And since that point, there's been at least a few teams to where that was the case. So while it's the assumption now, those can easily change going forward.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into our biggest winners and losers of NFL free agency. I'll start here. I think it's very clear that the biggest winner was the Cleveland Browns. Ryan's going to love this. They shored up every piece. I mean, they got the fullback signed. They traded for a great wide receiver. I just think they had no weakness within their offseason moves. Does the team have weakness? Absolutely, they do. They have weaknesses, but they got their tight end and Austin Cooper. They got their pieces offensively. They got their pieces defensively. I don't think you can really knock their offseason based on where they started. Before this offseason, I see the Cleveland Browns as a clear bet to finish 10-6 this season. And if they don't, Baker Mayfield, your job is in jeopardy because Case Keenum is coming hot and heavy in there.
I'll say, like I said on fan response, I need to see more from the Browns before I make a prediction because we're still missing a starting safety. We're still missing key additions at the linebacker position. They need to not mess up the drafts and get a left tackle with the 10th spots. If they draft anyone but a tackle at the 10th spots, I'll be very disappointed. But I agree with you. I say the Browns are the clear winners. Maybe not clear because the Cardinals have been making some fantastic moves, but I'd say the Browns are the winners as of right now. They looked at their tackles and saw that was a weakness, so they went out and got the best right tackle available on the market, Jack Conklin. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but the right tackle from the Titans for a very cheap deal to what was expected, only 3 years, $42 million. That's a good deal. And then the Browns want to run an offense similar to the Vikings, and the Vikings run the second most two tight end sets out of anyone in the league at like 35%. So you go out and get the best tight end on the market. A slight overpay, yes, but still, he is a fantastic tight end that will help in the run blocking game as well. And then you look, they needed a safety. They got Carl Joseph on a relatively cheap 1-year deal. He's dealt with injury concerns, but when healthy, he is a hard-hitting beast of a safety. So I can't fault that move at all. And then also they signed a linebacker. I don't believe him to be a starting caliber linebacker, but still adding depth to a position of needs is something I'll never complain about. So really, they've gone to free agency, looked at all their needs, and for the most part, filled them. So it's really hard to find something to complain about.
And you know what? Kevin Stefanski obviously running the Browns now, and just the pieces they added, as well as getting Case Keenum in there to put some pressure on Baker Mayfield to do well. If you were to ask me which team improved the most from December to February to now, which the offseason, it's clearly the Browns for me. And I'll lay out my loser as well. My loser in free agency, I would say, is going to be the Patriots. And I know that the Texans lost Hopkins for David Johnson and a couple of picks. I know that the Vikings lost out on Diggs, but most people think that was a good trade anyway. But when you lose a Hall of Fame quarterback like Tom Brady, whether he's top 10, top 15, top 5, whatever you believe he is right now, that's a lost offseason there. And whenever you lose a franchise quarterback, those quarterbacks are hard to replace. And now the Patriots are in a situation where they're kind of scrambling for answers at quarterback. I still think they make the playoffs, but they don't have a clear championship contention route anymore. Whereas before with Brady, they were clear contenders. Now they drop down to a fringe playoff chaser. That's it. So they're the losers. They lost Brady for nothing for the reasons Sri said. That Houston may have lost Hopkins, but they didn't lose him for absolutely nothing.
I'm going to say my winner and loser. And I mean, I get your guys' point about the Browns and, the Browns being the clear-cut winner of this free agency. But my biggest winner of this NFL free agency has nothing to do with any of the NFL teams. My biggest winner of this NFL free agency is the sports media and the sports fans across the world. Look at what we are suffering right now with the coronavirus. Everybody is staying home. There's no sports, no baseball, no basketball, no hockey. Nothing's going on. All we're just doing is, I don't know, going on Facebook every day, going on Twitter every day, trying to learn how to cook, stuff like that, trying to play bingo, blah, blah, blah. It's like really boring right now. Thank you, Roger Goodell and the rest of the NFL for not delaying free agency and actually give us something to talk about instead of always looking at this news that the world is ending with this virus. You just gave First Take, Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, our show, Carpool Chat, Fan Response, Buzzer Beaters, all the other sports shows right now. Thank you so much, Roger Goodell, because you gave us content that we can eat up for the next 2 months. We could literally take all the signings, discuss 10 per day, and then we will have content for the next 2 months. And then after that, you got the NFL draft. So thank you so much, Roger Goodell. Bravo.
Isaiah, I absolutely love it. I might have to shift my pick to that because, man, were we so cooped up out here with the coronavirus striking, and now the media gets to report, which is their job, and now we, the fans out there, get to experience all this frenzy, this historic offseason. It's been really a great escape from the reality right now, and that's really what sports is all about. It's escaping the reality, bringing us great entertainment, whether it's the rise or the fall of our teams. Sorry to your Chargers, Trevor, and congrats to your Browns, Ryan. But, as we all know, we always have to have winners and losers. So, Isaiah, I'm going to need you to pick a loser.
Before I pick a loser, let's just all stand up and give Roger Goodell a standing ovation for not delaying free agency. The whole world thanks you, man. Anyways,
right.
my biggest loser is, I would say, the LA Rams. They just released Todd Gurley, their face of their franchise, their star running back, who was Jared Goff's safety blanket. Now the Rams are going to have to rely on Jared Goff to win them games. Before, it was hand the ball off to Todd Gurley, and Jared Goff will get you into third and manageable and let you, basically dink and dunk. Now you have to rely on Jared Goff to win you games. And as much as I love Jared Goff, I don't think he can win you games. So I think the Rams just took a massive step back. And, hey, if Todd Gurley goes to Tampa Bay, like it's being rumored with Tom Brady, you're going to have two guys that have a big chip on their shoulder to try to come back with vengeance next season. And it's going to be
if
scary.
Todd Gurley goes to Tampa Bay, all bets of what I said are off. I think they finish at 11-5 and they win the division, just like Sri had said earlier.
Steven, you know what's going to be even more scary is if both Todd Gurley and Antonio Brown go to Tampa Bay, and you've got Gurley, Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Tom Brady, OJ Howard, Cameron Bray. That's like the Warriors super team right there.
All right. Well, Ryan picked the winner as the Browns as well, although he saw it as a little bit closer, not as clear cut, given the moves the Cardinals made. What about your loser, Ryan? You got to pick a loser here.
I want to say the Houston Texans, but that seems like the easy answer. So I'm going to go in a different direction. Really, I see two teams that have really suffered from free agency. One of them is the Philadelphia Eagles. You lost one of your key players and key leaders in Malcolm Jenkins, the safety, who is now going
100%.
back to the Saints. So that is just a huge loss. And I understand why he left and why the team decided to let him go, because he wanted to sign a multi-year deal for a large amount of money. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices to keep the cap under control, and this is one of them, but still was a key loss. And the other one may come as a bit of a surprise, but I'm going to say the Chicago Bears for the Nick Foles trade. I know they didn't give up a lot, but hear me out. I don't believe that this Bears team will allow Nick Foles to start. I think they will still, even with this trade, stick with Mitch Trubisky because they gave up so much to get him. They gave up like a third-round pick to move up one spot to get him. So I still think they invested too much in him. I think they're going to stubbornly keep him in no matter how bad he plays. And then you'll have Nick Foles just taking up cap space, sitting on the bench. I don't believe this will be the next Ryan Tannehill and the Titans type deal. I think this will just end up being a massive waste of cap space.
Wow, very interesting takes there, but thanks for that, Ryan. Trevor, before I ask you about your winners and losers, this just popped in my mind. Phillip Rivers, longtime Charger, now goes to the Colts. Trevor, are you going to be a Colts fan this year?
I'm not going to be a Colts fan. I'll stay with my Chargers. They've been with me for a long time. I've seen players leave, like LaDainian Tomlinson when he went to the Jets. I didn't become a Jets fan. So, I'm still going to ride out with my Chargers through thick and thin. I remember when I was younger, I used to be an Eagle fan with Donovan McNabb. And at the age of 5, I was sick of them losing in the playoffs. So I was like, I need a new team. And then I was playing NFL 2K3, came across the Chargers, and then I've been hooked on ever since.
Well,
Also,
what? There's a lot of – oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Also, Tyrod Taylor is a very solid quarterback.
He is.
He's definitely not a franchise quarterback, but is a great option for 1 or 2 years to be a type of bridge quarterback. If you're asking for like a bridge quarterback, you won't find one much better than Tyrod Taylor in this league.
Yeah, absolutely.
He looked good in preseason too when he played too. So.
Yeah, Trevor, I just want to say, if you're going to stay a loyal Charger fan, which you have done for the past, 15 years of your life, there's a lot of logistics opportunities in Southern California. Love to see you join us down here in the greatest state in the U.S., California. Me and Isaiah would love to come down, visit you, talk sports all day, and go to a Charger game.
Yeah.
Hold on, Steven.
Stadium.
Ryan's got something to say about that.
Steven, I think you mispronounced Ohio when talking about the best state in the country.
All right. So we got a little bit of interstate rivalry here.
The greatest state in America who has the most coronavirus cases. Exactly. So great.
Wouldn't that make it Washington then?
I believe it's updating a lot, but it might be New York now. California is number 3, I believe.
Regardless, I don't see this as the best judge on whose state is the best.
All right, that's why we're moving back to sports here, Trevor. The moment of truth. I got to have you pick your winner and loser of the offseason here.
My winners have to be the Cleveland Browns and the Cardinals. They're building up for a playoff berth. It's gonna happen. And then my losers, obviously the Texans, but like that's too easy. But I think the Patriots, with like the whole organization just getting so old, is gonna hurt them in the long haul. And it just depends on when Bill Belichick retires. As soon as he retires, they don't have a system in place. There's gonna be a lot more losing seasons. But until then, they're gonna be like 8-8, 7-9, or 9-7, flipping between those 2 years. The Bills have their up and down, but I think the Patriots will be second, or if not, get first if the Bills don't have a fluke and try to stay dominant. But I think the Patriots will still be a contender in that division.
So let me understand you correctly here, Trevor. Just for clarification, you don't have the Patriots going 3-13.
No, I don't have them going 3-13. That's just insane. They still have other weapons.
And Isaiah.
They're lower on like their salary cap. They have a lot more salary cap space. They don't invest on franchise tag players. Like you look at Bill Belichick. When's the last time they put like a franchise tag on someone getting like 35 million, 45 million? You don't see that with the Patriots. So they do have the space to go all out in this draft, make some moves happen the next 2 to 3 years, and be back in the playoffs. And like that's how the Patriots work. They're always reloading. They don't rebuild.
Plus, like I said, you lost a franchise quarterback and the greatest quarterback of all time. No matter where you rank him right now, you lost a franchise quarterback for nothing. At least with Hopkins, the Texans got something out of it. At least with LeBron leaving Cleveland in 2010, Cleveland got something out of it, some draft picks or something. You literally lost Brady for nothing. So you lose. You're the loser of the offseason. I think it's just the end of discussion. For me, the winner and losers are so clear here.
Steven, before we go to Sri, I just want to say, Cleveland losing LeBron, you said they got something. They didn't just get something. They got a potentially great player in Colin Sexton, who has been balling out before the NBA shut down.
Well, I was talking about the 2010 move, but yeah, either way, both times they got a trade out of it. Patriots lost Tom Brady for nothing. So I want to go to Sri now with his take on the winner and loser of the offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on the Patriots. I don't think that they had the best offseason this year, but I'm gonna agree with Ryan, and I'm gonna say that the Chicago Bears had the worst offseason. Yeah, I agree with him. I don't think Nick Foles is the quarterback to take them to that next level. And even more than that, they signed a 30-year-old Robert Quinn to a huge contract. They signed Jimmy Graham to a decent contract. Do you see Jimmy Graham play last year? I don't think he played too well.
I saw him play 7 years ago. He looked pretty good 7 years ago, Sri.
Yeah,
he was terrible in fantasy.
This is not 2011 anymore, So I see the Chicago Bears spending a lot of money and not really getting much out of it. They had that one season 2 years ago where they were able to make the playoffs, but in the NFC North with the Packers and the Vikings, and now with the Lions getting some more pieces, it's going to be a tough road for Chicago fans, I think, in the next upcoming few years. And in terms of winners, I see the winner being in the Patriots' own division. I see it being the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, they got Stephon Diggs, another weapon for Josh Allen, and Josh Allen just continues to improve every season. They have a strong offensive line, and they made some moves on their defense. They signed some good defensive line players to add to their plethora of defensive weapons there. So I see the Bills having, a top flight defense as they've had for, a couple of years now. But now I see their offensive line, getting 1 year more experience, Josh Allen getting 1 year more experience, adding that explosive receiver with Stephon Diggs. I see this Buffalo Bills team, actually winning the division next year. And I see them making the playoffs for 2 years straight.
I agree with that. I do think they become a better football team here overall. I just don't see it as a drastic improvement.
Also, I have to say that I completely forgot about the bad Robert Quinn and Jimmy Graham deals when anointing the Chicago Bears the losers. So given that information, I gave them a tie with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's just outright the Chicago Bears. They're extra losers now that I remember those two deals.
Now, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, speaking of the winners here, if they do manage to land Todd Gurley, do they become the winner for you guys? Do they take that top spot as the winner of free agency?
No, there's a reason Todd Gurley got released, and it's that his knee is just not reliable. You saw how little the Rams used him, and that's because they knew that his knee could not go through the stresses of a full NBA season. They would know better than any other team, and they released him. Now, part of that was to free up some cap space, but another reason was they just unfortunately can't trust that knee, which is a shame because when healthy, he is a top 3 running back, so it's a darn shame.
Okay, anyone else there? Do you see Todd Gurley to the Buccaneers changing who the winner of the offseason was for you?
For me, I would just say that it's Todd Gurley alone won't really change it because I believe the Bucks are already a great team. Plus, they do. You guys said in the beginning about how the Bucks need they don't have a run game. They have Peyton Barber and they have that other guy, Ronald Jones, I believe his name.
Yeah, but
They
none
were
of those are 3 down backs. None of them are dedicated running backs who can really pound through. I mean, at least with Sony Michel, he had a year where he was the go-to back in New England. I don't see that happening with either Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can if you add Todd Gurley, you can do a running back by committee like the 49ers do with Coleman, Breida, and Mostert. If you have Todd Gurley, Peyton Barber, and Ronald Jones, that's a pretty good running back by committee. But I would just say yeah, Todd Gurley alone, he won't really change. But if it's Todd Gurley and Antonio Brown, okay, the Buccaneers are going, I would say 13-3. NFC Championship.
All right. Well, if no one else has any more thoughts.
I do.
Yes.
I have one more thought. Todd Gurley, you can't rely on the knee with a running back. And if it's a bad injury, running backs don't tend to recover. After a serious injury, they decline and then basically retire. The only running back that has came back from injury and had a phenomenal year, from what I've seen, was Adrian Peterson, and he ends up winning the rushing title. So if Todd Gurley has something like that, comes back from this injury and wins the rushing title, then it pays off for the Bucks. But if he doesn't do something like that and he has lower numbers than he had last year, then it's just it was a bust move.
See, I see the Bucks' weakness is their defense. Now, I see them better off spending money on defensive players. If they sign Jadeveon Clowney, now that may be a different story. But signing Todd Gurley, I don't think is their number one priority at this point. I think that they need to get some defensive players to, add to that defense to make it at least a league average defense so that their top flight offense can carry them while their defense is not a complete liability like it was at points last season. So the Bucks could end up being the winners of free agency, but I don't see that happening by them signing Todd Gurley. I see that happening by them, trying to add some pieces to that defense that could use a lot of improvement.
Sri, about the Todd Gurley thing, I really don't think Todd Gurley will cost a lot of money because he's getting paid $5 million right now by the Rams. And I just think that if you sign Todd Gurley, you're probably going to be getting him on a minimum contract, $1 or $2 million. So I think if you sign Todd Gurley, I think it'll be a good move because it's pretty much a low risk, high reward move. And yeah, I think they should sign Jadeveon Clowney because imagine Jadeveon Clowney with Shaq Barrett and also Jason Pierre-Paul. That's a really good defensive line.
Yeah, and I agree that, Todd Gurley may be a low risk, high reward move, but my point is that Todd Gurley's not going to make the difference in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers either being or not being the winners of free agency. I think it's the defensive pieces that they add that could really make them the winners of free agency and see them be the most improved team next year, rather than someone like Todd Gurley or another offensive weapon at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as well as the Colts, they're going to be the most interesting teams coming into this next season. We're going to have so much more to talk about here at Carpool Chats, but that's going to do it for us here.
Wait, Steven, before we end this show, I just want to say some stuff real quick about my guy, Tyler Beatty of the San Francisco Giants. It was just announced that he needs Tommy John surgery. This was supposed to be his breakout season, but hey, Tyler, I wish, if you're watching, I don't know if you are, but if you're watching, I wish you nothing but the best, man. You were supposed to come out this season and dominate. You were nice enough to take a picture with me at Giants Fan Fest. I really appreciate that. And I just wish you nothing but the best. Wish you a speedy recovery. And I know you're going to come out next season and kick ass, man. So nothing but the best.
All right, great way to wrap up the show. We're going to have so much more to discuss here once the season kicks off, once the NBA season returns. We don't know when, but this has been Carpool Chats, episode 24. Thank you so much, Ryan, Trevor, and Sri for joining in.
Sure thing.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys back on the show to talk more about these NFL moves and perhaps the rest of the NBA season.
All righty.
Stay safe.
All right, good night,
everybody.
everyone.